Welcome to lovely Aviation Museum. And I don't know if you noticed when you drove in, you saw the dragon. The dragon in the little yard there. I think that the end of this weekend, who's going to that robotic show? There's some sort of robotic show happening. Anybody know about it? I don't really know anything about it. A few of you, yeah, put your hands out. Come on, engage with me. We're a small group of people. You're going to the dragon. What is it? What is it called? La Machine. La Machine. That's what it's called? La Machine? La Machine. Oh, okay. Who's going to La Machine? Awesome. So what kind of machines are going to be there? Anybody know? Spiders, dragons, scorpions, but all the nasty bugs, all the nasty things. Is that what's showing up? Yeah. What about goats and sheep and no? Okay. Awesome. Well, I feel like I have a word for you this morning. I feel like God is going to speak to many of you, and I kind of want to speak on a topic that I probably would have never spoken on before. I feel like God has been really helping me work on my perspective on a few things, and we in environments like this, we develop a lot of lingo around certain elements of the nature of God. We develop a lot of lingo, and even though they may be scriptural, it's lingo that sometimes we don't even know why we believe it. Maybe we've never even experienced some of the things that we just say out of our mouth in life. How many know what I'm talking about? You may say something because you've heard it, you repeat it, but you don't even know if you believe it, or maybe you've never actually experienced it. It's like people, will often say God is good. That is a true statement. It's a biblical statement. I've experienced the goodness of God. But there are areas of my life that are on a journey to looking for the goodness of God sometimes. You know what I'm talking? It doesn't mean the goodness of God is not there. It's there. I just got to find it. And a lot of our life is spent trying to find what's already there. Right? There's no more gold that's ever going to show up on the earth. It's already there. There's no more, you get what I'm saying? It already exists. There's no more rock. There's no more water. It's already there. We're just uncovering it. We're explorers of a kingdom that many of us do not yet know. Uncovering all these amazing truths. And one of the things I want to speak on, I want to speak out of a passage this morning out of Deuteronomy. So if you have a Bible, I don't know, I believe the screen's working this week. Deuteronomy 8. Now I want to give you a little bit of context because this is a great book, because at this point in the game, there was a man named Moses. Everyone say Moses. Help me out here. A man named Moses. And he was given charge. In fact, he was called to lead, a few million people on a journey, on a crazy journey. It was 40 years. And the goal was for Moses to lead these people, his people, Israel, out of a place of bondage, out of Egypt, out of slavery that they had been in for 400 years. His journey, his call, his goal was to lead these millions of people through a desert. It was supposed to be probably about 3 weeks, but because of their rebellion, it took them 40 years. And he was given the responsibility of taking these people along a journey. And the first thing that he said to God when God called him is, "But I can't speak." But I can't speak. How many people's butts do we have in the room here today? Every one of you has a butt. Look to your neighbor and say, "You've got a butt." And you cannot lie in a second. Everyone's got a butt. And sometimes that but is when you're called to do something, your boss says, "Hey, can you do this?" You're like, "But I haven't been trained," or "But I have to go," or "But," there's always a but. "But I got to attend to this," "But I got to attend this," "But you asked me to do this first." No. There's always a but. And Moses' but was, "I can't talk. I got to stutter. I don't feel confident. I have a limitation." In other words, God, like if you called me, you must see my limitation. So why would you call me? But the beautiful thing about God is God looks past the limitation and in through the limitation and says, "Hey, in your limitation, I will actually make you stronger, better." And it actually is what approves you of my calling. Your limitation is actually what approves you of my calling over your life, because within your limitation, when you uncover that limitation and accept your limitation, I can actually be the one that gets all the glory. And in fact, it was said of Moses that he was the most humble man that ever lived. So Moses accepts this call at the age at a very old age of 80. 80 years old. 80 years old, he accepts a call to lead millions of people out of slavery into what the Bible and Jesus calls the Promised Land. A land that is totally polar opposite to the land they were living in Egypt, in slavery. So hey, you're living here, but I got a whole awesome, amazing, breakthrough lifestyle for you over here. But you have to journey a journey of faith to get there. So this context now, Moses, I painted a little bit of a picture for you. Moses now, he's about to die. They're in transition. He's about to pass on the baton to Joshua. They are in transition, preparing now Israel. After 40 years, a whole generation has died off. There was a whole new generation that was born in the wilderness that were taking the promised land. The ones that came from Egypt all died off. Now, the ones that were born in the process, in the wilderness, all they knew was wilderness, are the ones that are being prepared to occupy and take over. The thing about going into the promised land, people think, oh, we're out of the wilderness. It's going to be easier. No, actually, it's harder and requires more faith because in the wilderness, they had everything that they needed provided for them. In the promised land, they had to cultivate. They had to co-create. They had to occupy. They had to overcome the enemy. They had to conquer. They had to fight. The fight is always different in the wilderness than it is in the promised land. Two different fights. And all of us think most of the time in this room, hey, when I get the big raise, when I get the big job, when I get the big career, it's going to be easier. No, it's going to be harder. Managing blessing is always harder than managing poverty. Having nothing, right? Think about it. Having nothing, yeah, you may be stressed out about, but you have nothing. When you have more, there's more to be stressed out about. And we think, oh, it takes so much faith when you're in the desert, brother. When you're in the desert and you're struggling and you don't know where your next meal is coming, it actually takes more faith to live on the mountain than it does to be in the valley. Because in the valley, you're screwed. It's you and God and that's it. When you're on the mountain, you fight with yourself. Yourself says, you got this, man. You could do it. You don't need God. You got your strength. You got yourself here anyways. And you begin to convince yourself. That's why the kingdom says it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom. Because you think you got it. It's actually more faith on the mountain than it is in the valley. What a perspective shift. Everyone wants the mountain. But when you get to the mountain, if you haven't learned to win in the valley, you will definitely fall off the mountain that you're on. Now, so they're preparing. They're literally about to cross over the Jordan. They're preparing the people. Guys, when you get over into your promised land, when you get there, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to be prepared for. This is what you have to remember because you're going to be tempted with all kinds of things. When you get over here, you got to remember, who was it that brought you through the wilderness all those years? Who is it that brought your ancestors that are all dead now because of their unbelief, doubt, and rebellion? Who is the one that brought them out of Egypt in the beginning, which even gave you the life that you have right now in the wilderness that's about to cross over into the promised land? Remember that it's God who gives you the power to create wealth and be awesome. Because when you feel awesome, that's when you forget how awesome God is. Remember, when you feel awesome in the promised land and you got this, you're finally there, you've arrived, man. You got like the $10 million house and you're fine dining. Finally, you're there. Remember who got you there. Because your greatest temptation and test will be, was it you or him? Was it you or him? So it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom because when you're so self-focused, it's hard to be God-focused. So he's setting up the transition. I want to read it to you in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1. Keep and live out the entire commandment that I'm commanding you today, so that you'll live and prosper and enter and own the land that God promised to your ancestors. When you go to the land of prosperity, I want you to prosper because it's possible that when you enter into prosperity, you won't prosper. That's what he's saying. It's possible for you to be in prosperity and not be prospering. There's a prosperity according to the world, right? And there's a prosperity according to God. There is a spiritual deprivation sometimes in material prosperity. So when you are in the land of material prosperity, you got all the food, you got all the houses, the fine dining, and it's all good now in the hood. No more desert. Remember that your soul still has to prosper. Your soul still has to find peace. So I want to continue reading. Remember this. I love this. This is out of the Message translation. Remember every road that God led you on for those 40 years in the wilderness. You know that whether it's a good road or a bad road, if you have Jesus as the centerpiece of your life, he's leading you on new roads in every new season. And new roads always mean new rewards. New roads always mean new rewards. And in every new season you find yourself in, there's a new reward attached to the new road. And whether you're in what you may call a wilderness or what you may call a mountain, I believe this: if Jesus is the center, he's led you on that road. It doesn't mean that the fox that came and bit your ankle on the road was him. It doesn't mean that the bear that came out of the bush and chopped your leg off was him. But he's leading you on the road. Maybe you got your attention off for a little bit while you were on the road and some stuff happened. Don't blame God for it, but he's leading you on the road. Remember every road that God led you on those 40 years in the wilderness. Listen to this. Pushing you to your limits. Anybody ever felt like they've been pushed to their limits? I think one of the favorite things that Jesus likes to do in life is push you to your limit. That's why faith separates, I don't want to use that term, but the faith separates the children from the mature when it comes to spiritual life. Children don't like being pushed to their limit. That's why when they get tired, they start getting cranky, right? You can tell when a child's been pushed to their limit. My daughter Harvest, my youngest daughter of 4, had her first birthday yesterday. Well, it was 3 days ago, but we celebrated it like officially yesterday. And you could tell by the end of the day, I mean, it was a busy day. She was pushed to her limit. She was letting us know by her response, I can't do this anymore. Take me to bed. Give me the breast. Let me clock out for the night. That's what she was saying without saying it. That's what sometimes you sound like with your complaining and your grumbling to God. God, you push me. I can't do this anymore. I can't handle it anymore. Give me the bread. Not really, but give me what I need so I can clock out. But as you mature in Christ, as you grow up in Christ, the limits are actually what develop and reveal the leader inside of you. The quality of leader inside of you really is determined by your limitations. You see the quality of leader within you when you're pushed to your limits. You see what you're really made of when you're pushed to your limits. Listen to this. Pushing you to your limits, testing you so that he, who? Jesus, God, would know what you were made of. Whether you would keep his commandments or not. Why is he saying this? Because guys, listen, they're in a wilderness culture. All they know is what I would call struggle at some level. Yet everything they need, they don't really have to work very hard to get their food. They got manna falling on the ground. They have quail appearing out of heaven. I mean, they got waters bursting out of rocks and random places. I mean, they have what they need without trying to do much, right? Think about it. Think about this scenario. All they know is that. It's like they're being spoon-fed as children. You see, because the promised land matures your spiritual adulthood. The wilderness really teaches you how to trust like a child. Everything's taken care of. It's like my children, like they don't have to make their own food. There will come a time when they come into their promised land, so to speak, at the right age, where they got to learn how to make their own food. Manage their own money, right? Pay their own bills, buy their own house, have their own giants to wrestle with. Right now, their giant is me and mommy. They got to convince us. They got to take us out. They got to wrestle with us on things that they want, right? That's their only giant right now. You get what I'm saying, right? in the wilderness, it's like you remain as children. But in the promised land, you grow up as adults. That's why it's harder in the promised land to live and not get taken out than it is in the wilderness. And I want to see a perspective shift in the people when it comes to achieving and going after goals, going after great purpose in life. This is what Jesus is saying to us, I believe, this morning. He's saying, I want to push you to your limits, test you so that I can know, I understand, I can see what you're really made of. I want to see whether or not you would keep my commandments or not. It says this, he put you through hard times. He made you go hungry. Then he fed you with manna, something neither you or your parents knew anything about. So you will learn that men and women don't live by bread only. We live by every word that comes from God's mouth. I want you to trust like a child trusts their father and mother to feed them and provide whatever they need. Your clothes didn't wear out, and your feet, I love that, their underwear lasted 40 years. 40-year underwear. That's some crazy underwear. 40-year underwear, 40-year socks. Your clothes didn't wear out and your feet didn't blister those 40 years. You learn deep in your heart that God disciplines you in the same way a father disciplines his child. And the way a father disciplines his child, according to Hebrews, is a father who loves his child will chasten his child, which means he trains him up the way he should go. The word is training. So in the wilderness, we're being trained like children to become warriors in the promised land. We're warriors in training in the wilderness, in the struggle, so we can win and be the warriors that we're called to be on the mountain. Do you hear what I'm saying? But the reason why he's saying this in this passage is I want to see what you're made of, is because I know it's going to be harder in the promised land. If you can't even handle this when I'm spoon feeding you, you see it? If you can't even handle the little tiny task that I've given you at your workplace, and you want to be this multi-millionaire, but if you can't even handle cleaning the toilet properly as a custodian in your workplace, how are you going to handle cleaning the spiritual, emotional toilets of all the people you're going to lead in life? Like, you're a warrior in training. So I got to push you, man, until you crack, until you break in the desert so I can prepare you. Because if I could push you till you crack in the wilderness and restore you in that place, when you get onto the mountain, all your cracks will reflect light. Because they'll see you as somebody who was pushed, broken, but made it. They'll see you as someone who has a testimony of struggle, but winning. No one wants a perfect pot. I want a cracked pot. I want people to see the light that comes through my cracks, because light only reflects through a cracked pot, not a perfect pot. So it's in the wilderness that all that stuff is breaking you. It's cracking you. It's releasing these hairline fractures in you so that you continue to trust him and let him rebuild you and restore you in the preparation so he can transition you to the place he wants you to be. Are you hearing me this morning? So he's pushing you to your limits. So your limits are actually making you limitless, so to speak. You embracing your limitation is actually what's going to make you limitless. It's going to liberate you. But until we can embrace our limitations, we will never be liberated to become limitless in Christ. So I'm pushing you, Israel. I'm pushing you. I'm making it a little hard for you. But guess what? I'm making it hard for you, but I've always got the solution in my back pocket. You've come to a place where there's no food. Well, I'm going to provide food supernaturally for you. I'm going to let it rain quail. I'm going to get water out of a rock, because I'm the God who created everything. So I can create anything out of everything at any point. So I'm teaching you how to trust me in this place. God disciplines you in the same way a father disciplines his child. I want to talk today about the subject loving limitation. Write that down. Loving limitation. This at first kind of challenged my thinking a little bit, because we talk about We serve a God of no limitation. And with God, all things are possible. But I'm talking about the limitation that we all have as humans. There's a limitation within our human effort. There's a limitation within our ability as humans to do or not do. There is a limitation. How many have ever felt like at times they've passed their limitations as a human? You have one or two opportunities within that moment to decide on. Either one, the opportunity is you're going to grow through it and get restored out of it, or two, you're going to let it fracture you and keep you fractured forever. We always have two choices in life. One is to make best of what we have, or instead of making the best of what we have, focus on what we don't have and live in the place of hopelessness, despair, and discouragement. Loving limitation. It's the secret sauce to your calling. Something that I feel like God has been speaking to me about for the last 3 to 4 weeks, that, Shawn, I want you to learn your limitation. I'm like, what do you mean, God? Like, what do you mean, learn my limitation? Well, Shawn, if you look back over the course of your life, you look back over the course of different seasons of your life, if you could evaluate yourself, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to see areas and situations in your life where you reached your limit. Where you hit your limit, you hit your ceiling, you went outside of your limitation. And maybe you went outside of your limitation because at the point you hit your limitation, you didn't lean into me. You kept trying to make it work in your own strength. How many people in this house have tried to make something work in their own strength? It only goes so far, right? I mean, here's the thing. When you're in relationship with Jesus, you're kind of screwed in one sense because, and I use that language because I want you to see it like that. Like you're in trouble because you can't get away with as much as you can when you don't know Jesus. I mean, when you let Jesus into your life, it's like getting married. You don't just make decisions without your spouse now. Some of you do, and you're in trouble for it. But you've added the creator now of the universe, who actually knows everything from the end to the beginning. He knows everything. He knows the best for you, even when you don't see it or want it. And all of a sudden now, it's like there's a level of awareness of our limitation. That without God, things are impossible, which is a limitation. With God, all things are possible. So let me just jump back into this for a second. Sometimes the pendulum of life swings outside of our control. How many, you feel like you find balance for a season and the pendulum swings and it's like something is thrown at you and you feel like you're off balance again. That happens all the time, right? I mean, just have kids, get married, and you'll realize that the pendulum is always swinging outside of your control, You're about to leave somewhere and you're one of your kids, has to go to the washroom, something, or you're stalled by some sort of issue, or you get a flat tire or something. I mean, there's always things that the life is throwing at us that are swinging the pendulum, that cause us to either go out of balance or come into balance. And those seasons sometimes feel like limitation. But until we can learn to embrace it, we won't see change and innovation take place in our life. Some of the greatest attributes or values or gifts, I would call them, that come out of embracing our limitation, loving our limitation, is that change and innovation are inevitable within limitation. What do I mean by that? Well, just try dieting for example. When you limit your food intake or limit the types of food that you've been eating your whole life, all of a sudden you learn of new freedom in food that you never saw before. What I mean by that is you learn to get new nutrients, different nutrients out of different foods that you've never eaten before. You grow, you mature through limitation. You hear what I'm saying? You've been used to a certain kind of way of eating, right? You limit yourself in your eating, and all of a sudden now, there's a newfound freedom in raw almonds that you never saw before. All of a sudden, you find yourself liking things you never liked before because now you kind of have no choice. But within the limitation, it's freed you up to be more experimental and to be more of an explorer when it comes to food. And now all of a sudden, you have a whole new eating plan. Or how about this, when you have cutbacks at work, or maybe you're a leader of an organization, finances are tough, or maybe personally you're cutting back on your finances. When you are in a leaner season, you learn how to do more with little, right? So your limitation in the end has the power at some level to become a blessing to you. When you had a lot, the temptation was spend more because you have more. But when you spend more because you have more, you have to manage more. So the stress is higher. There's actually a liberation in limitation at some level. I'm not saying always stay there, but this is the pendulum that we go through in life. Are you with me this morning? We need to learn our capacities. Limitations are given to safeguard us. I think, if you're a foodie, how many foodies in the house do we have here? Like real foodies. I'm not talking about Kelsey's, Montana's, you go to Moxie's. Okay, I'm like real foodies. No one puts their hand up because you're all scared now. Yeah, I'm talking about like real quality food. Like if you eat raw beef, you're a foodie. Sorry, I'm just joking. No judgment. But okay, so we got some foodies in the house. Only a few. That's really sad. What do you guys eat? Like Swiss Chalet, St. Hubert's, Pizza Hut. Who still goes to Pizza Hut, honestly? Anybody in here? It's all good. So, I was thinking about this. I'm like, if you're a foodie and you go to a restaurant, the first sign that the restaurant will not be good if you're a foodie is if the menu has too many options. Why? Because think about it. When there's a limited amount of options, there's a greater ability for the chefs and the cooks to master what they do make. There is no way you could quality control, or there's no way you could be consistent and quality control and have the best food experience if you have 1,000 options. Because half the people don't even care about their job in the back when you go to a restaurant like that. I'm just saying, okay? Not judging all that. If you work at a restaurant, God bless you and you're a chef. I'm just saying, like, you get what I'm saying. Like, you probably don't even care, okay, if you're working at a restaurant. But anyways, no, maybe you do. Hopefully you do, okay? If you don't, I'm not going to your restaurant. But anyways, so when you go to a restaurant and there's a menu and the menu is short, it's probably going to be good because they spend a lot of time doing the same thing over and over again. So in the limitation, there's actually a limitation of options. But number one, for me, it's liberating. For Michelle, it's really liberating because she has a hard time making decisions when there's too many options. So for her, it's like, I got 4 options. It's easy. When there's too many options, right, it's like bondage. And paralysis sets in. There's too many things. I don't know what I want. Do I want Greek? Do I want Italian? Do I want Dutch? Do I want whatever? What do I want? But when there's only 1 or 2 things, you only have 2 choices. It's super liberating, right? For the indecisive people in the room, how many do we have? You want less options, so become a foodie. You want less options. It's paralysis. Now, I've heard studies that have gone out about Netflix is like a sign of the generation that we are right now, how they're becoming more and more indecisive. Because now with all the options, people go on Netflix, there's so many options they don't watch anything. Right? There's no limitation. There's just way too many options. I don't know if I feel like this. And then you got action, and then you got drama, and then you got whatever else you watch comedy. And it's like, well, I want to watch comedy. I don't know. But if all there was comedy, it would be a lot easier to decide. So limitation actually has a level of liberation attached to it. Start loving the limitations and work within those limitations and see what God can and wants to do. Because too many options equals paralysis. Ingvar Kamprad only had enough money to start a business selling matchsticks. And then he turned that business into IKEA. This guy who started a global brand that probably 80% of you have how many have IKEA furniture in your house? How many men like assembling IKEA furniture? No, anybody? No, okay. It's great. It's a global brand, right? It's big time. But this guy who started the whole thing, he didn't have enough money in the beginning to have IKEA, so he started selling matchsticks. So he worked within his limitations, said, okay, this is all I got. So I got some matchsticks. I'm going to sell matchsticks. That's all I got. And now look what he's got. You see, when all you've got is what you've got, what you're going to get is going to be a whole lot more than what you had. If you can see and love the limitation that stands before you. Instead of saying, all I got isn't enough, I want that. No, wait a minute. If you just focus on this and all you've got, then what you really want, you will get. Richard Branson has built 400 businesses despite having dyslexia. Once again, limitation. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs that have made a difference in this world that never even had an education. Maybe it was because of life circumstances they couldn't. Maybe because their family was poor, but they made best with what they had, and look what they have now. They embraced and loved their limitation. Now, how do I know they loved their limitation? Because they worked within it and made it work until they got out of it. So I want to give you 4 quick things here. 4 keys in utilizing to learn your limits. Sometimes we go through seasons of burnout, we go through seasons of struggle, we go through seasons where we're weary and we're tired and we work hard. And if you're like me, okay, I'm a pretty consistent person. My wife and I were in this conversation yesterday. Like, I'm like steady, intense all the time. Like, I'm just steady. Like I'm steady. I'm not like this all the time. But there are areas of my life where I am like this all the time, where I have incredible amounts of energy and then I pull back for a season. Incredible amounts of energy and I pull back for a season. How many are like that? Yeah. And if you learn your limitations and you learn how to operate within that flow and learn how to make the best of it, you will be really productive in the high points. I'm not saying that it should be like that all the time, but that's kind of what a lifeline looks like. Right? I mean, real life kind of looks like this. Your life is only sustained. Your life isn't sustained like this. Your life is sustained like this. Right? You have your highs, you have some lows, but it's what you do in the lows that get you to your highs, and it's what you do in your highs that bring you back down to the lows. And if you can learn to flow with the ebbs and flows of that pendulum in your life, you will find your sweet spot and find a liberation in embracing your limits. But you got to learn the signs of your limitation. There is this, way back in the day when they didn't have high-tech technology to safeguard miners' lives in the coal mines and the gold mines. You know, there'd be massive explosions that would take place and kill off miners. It happened frequently back in the day, and they had really no way to measure like how much carbon monoxide was building up, how many dangerous gases were building up that were causing these explosions. So they started using these canary birds. You guys know what canaries are? Because canaries are very sensitive to poisonous gases. And because canaries are always in a place of song, they're always singing, they started to bring canaries into these mines with them to kind of measure and help them sort of discern whether or not the atmosphere was poison and ready to explode or it was healthy. And the way that they would know if something was about to happen is if the canary started to get moody and stop singing. Because normally, without any of the gases around, this canary was singing, it was happy, but they'd bring these canaries into the mines with them, and the moment they would stop singing, they'd get all the miners out of the mine so they could safeguard the miner's life. Let me ask you a question. What are your canaries in this season? The things that are set up in your life to give you the signs that you're coming to your limits. I'm talking about reaching your unhealthy limits without God. Where you're at the end of yourself. What are your canaries? What are the things that are set up to warn you of dangerous gases that are building up? Get out now. Safeguard yourself now. What are your canaries? Let's go back to Deuteronomy 8 for a second. You know, I mentioned a few things regarding the challenge being harder at some level on the mountain than it is in the wilderness, and it takes more faith because you see, in the wilderness, you have no choice but to be in faith. In success and on the mountain, you have the choice, which is why it's the most dangerous place to be. Right? When you have no choice, you have no choice. It's either going to be God or it's not. But when you're on the mountain and you're swimming in the sauce and you're bathing in the butter and the favor is all around you and the canaries are singing all around you and everything is good and you're on your yacht sipping your margarita, that's when all hell breaks loose. That's when the big guns come out. When the big giants come out. Because the giants always stand on the mountain. You know what's at the bottom of the mountain is the little foxes. Little things. Those are easy. Those are easy. Deal with the little foxes. But it's the big 9.5 feet giants that stand on top of the mountain and says, you know what, you got up here? Watch me take you out. You're getting a little loose. You're getting a little dull. You're too confident in yourself. What happened to the relationship you used to have with me down in the valley when you had no choice but to have a relationship with me? Because if you didn't, you were screwed. Now you're on the mountain, man, and Goliath's like, hey, I'm taking you out. That's when you need to choose to have the most faith. That's when you need to say, God, outside of your grace, I'm being thrown down off this mountain. That's when you need the canaries the most, signaling to you, hey, I've stopped singing. It's a warning. Be careful. I know I'm speaking to somebody. I know I'm speaking to myself. Deuteronomy 8, verse 10. Let's read on after the opening chapter. So we hear about the preparation. God is encouraging the people of Israel to get ready, to occupy, to overtake. They've been in this season of struggle. Now they're going to a season of success, but it's about to get a little harder, but in a different way. Deuteronomy 8, verse 10. When you have eaten your fill, be sure to praise the Lord your God for good land he has given you. Why does he have to say that? Because the temptation is, you've eaten your fill, sit back and relax, man. 40 years of struggle over. I'm on vacation. And for a lot of us hard workers in the room, vacation equals vacation from God and everything. Right? Like, don't talk to me like I just want to be like, I'm so tired. I want to be like a hermit in a cave. Right? That's why if I go on vacation, my only dream vacation right now in this season is an all-inclusive, where I don't have to do anything. I mean, we have 4 kids, so it's just like, I don't want to go out to the grocery store and do what I'm doing at home on vacation. Right? I don't know about you, but I just don't want to do that. When you have eaten your fill, be sure to praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you, because you might forget. Verse 11, but that is the time to be careful. When you're in enjoyment, be the most careful. You're like, man, yeah, I'm the man. Look what I did, man. Look at this sail. Woohoo, I'm the man. That's when you better watch out. Look for the canaries that aren't singing anymore, because there could be an explosion about to happen and ruin everything. How many have missed the canaries sometimes? I have. You missed the canaries. You wish they were there. Maybe you didn't bring them into the season with you. You didn't bring that into the season, and you didn't have the warning that you needed to adjust. But that is the time to be careful. Commands, or beware. Listen to this, verse 11. Beware that in your plenty you do not forget the Lord your God and disobey his commands, regulations, and decrees that I am giving you today. In your plenty, in your success, in your prosperity. Don't forget the most important part of prosperity is your soul. Your emotional well-being, your peace, everything that's in you that defines you as eternal is more important than all the things that are telling you, enjoy me, I'm amazing, material this, material that. It's all good, enjoy it, but don't forget the most important part of enjoyment, and that's the development, and that's the peace within your own soul. Jesus is very clear. You can gain the whole world, but forfeit your own soul. You trade your soul for material things. You trade your family for success. You trade everything that means something eternally for everything that means nothing eternally. It's this weird thing in life that life is screaming at us. Achieve this and get this. You very rarely do you see ads saying, hey, love your son. Very rarely do you see ads saying, hey, love your wife, because when everything's gone and taken from you, that's all you're going to have. Very rarely do you say, hey, just stop for a moment and check in on your family, pray for you. Where's that kind of advertising? So we live in a world where we're being screamed at in one ear by everything around us saying, get this, get that, it will all make you happier. And then at some level, for some reason, we're spending very little time in this book. It's like a whisper. Don't forget about this. This should be the loudest voice in our life. I am speaking to myself right now because it never ends. This process never ends. This battle, this fight never ends between the good and the great. The good is, yeah, be awesome in what you do, but the great is be amazing in who you are. Be awesome at what you do, but the greater form, the other side is be great at who you are. As a father, as a dad, as a friend, as a son, as a daughter, as a mother, as a, whatever you are as a leader, be great in who you are, not just in what you do. Because when what you do is over, what will you have? If you don't have who you are, then when what you do stops because something happens, an accident happens, or you retire, you lose yourself. And when you lose yourself, that's why people go through midlife crises, because they never let themselves develop who they were. They were defined by all that they did, all that they had, and then they lost it all somehow, and they lost their soul in the process. They go through a midlife crisis. Then they start trying to find ways to fulfill the void that's inside of them. Every one of us goes through moments like that. We're trying to feed an empty part of us that was only created to be filled by Him. This Jesus that says, hey, at the end of your life, none of what you're doing right now is going to matter that much. But I'm going to ask you one question. Hey, did you learn to love well? Did you let me in every area of your life so I could develop who you were more than what you did? Oh man, I feel like God is speaking to us this morning. Listen to what it says, and I'm going to go back here for a second. That's the time, verse 11, to be careful. Beware that in your plenty you do not forget the Lord your God and disobey His commands, regulations, and decrees that I'm giving you today. Verse 12, for when you have become full and prosperous and have built fine homes to live in, and when your flocks and herds have become very large and your silver and gold have multiplied along with everything else. In other words, you're like a baller. Be careful. When you're a baller, that's when you need to be the most careful. When you made it big, be careful. That's why this worship sometimes of big dreams can be the demise, actually, of our dreams themselves. We worship our dreams sometimes without even knowing it. How do I know that? It's because those that worship their dreams usually are always trying to escape the process to get to their dreams. They're trying to get a quick fix to get out of what they're in because it's too hard. And without even knowing it, they're worshiping their dream. They're worshiping an ideal. They're worshiping something that doesn't even exist. Listen to what it says. Do not become proud. Verse 14. At that time. Because that's the key right there, guys. We're in the wilderness, we move to the promised land, and then we feel like we've achieved something. That pride sets in. You know what took out Lucifer in the beginning, who was a good angel, who became what we know as Satan himself? Pride. Pride. Simple. It's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom, not because they're rich, but because within their riches they forgot who it was that gave them their riches. And they became proud. Yeah, I could do that. Oh, yeah, I can. Oh, yeah, man, I know this guy over here. I could do that. No, be careful of your pride, because that's what's going to come before your fall. He said, don't become proud at the time and forget the Lord your God who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. Do not forget that He led you. Don't forget He led you through the great and terrifying wilderness. Like, bring things into perspective. Remember how it was super hard and you could barely feed your family and I came through for you. Remember when it was super hard and someone was dying in your family and I healed them. Remember all those little things that maybe aren't as big now because you're on the big mountain, big man? Remember those things, because it's that got you where you are. Remember how you got where you were. Are you hearing this? Because if you stay in that place of remembering, you'll have what you need to sit in that place of authority on the mountain and stay there. Someone got it. Yes. Do not forget that he led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its poisonous snakes and scorpions where it was so hot and dry. He gave you water from the rock. He fed you with manna in the wilderness, a food unknown to your ancestors. He did this to humble you and test you for your own good. Verse 17, because for the first time, think about it, in this equation, they're learning how to be totally reliant on God. When you lose everything, how many feel like they've lost, sometimes they feel like they've lost everything in life? A season in life, they feel like they lost everything. Or they lost something that was really precious to them. Come on, everybody probably has lost something. Those are what I would call the wilderness seasons of transition that teach us how to become reliant on him who is everything. You've lost everything, God wants to teach you how to rely on him who is everything. In the everything lost type season, he wants you to become reliant on his everything for everything that's been lost in your life. He uses those seasons to bring us true humility. You know what true humility is? It's not, it's like people that say, I don't want to sound like proud. Well, usually when they're prefacing it, their statement with, I don't want to sound proud, they feel somewhere in them that they probably are a little proud. So they just want you to know they're not proud, but they are proud, trying to hide their pride. You know what I'm saying, right? Just say it, and we'll decipher whether you're proud or not. True humility looks like obedience to what you know and feel you are to do, that God is leading you to do, despite how weird, awkward, or damaging it may be for your life. True humility is doing the hard thing when everyone wants to do the awesome thing. Because humility looks like, you know what, this hurts, man. Like, I don't want to do this right now, but it's the best thing for me. The best thing for you. It's the best thing for our relationship. Humility looks like being honest with who you really are. And we're all on a journey towards that, aren't we? Right? No one is. Okay, well, Jesus, help us. Deliver us. He fed you with manna. Verse 17, he did all this so you would never say to yourself, I love this, verse 17. He did all this so you would never say to yourself, I have achieved this wealth with my own strength and energy. Do you see this? He's facilitating stuff in your life right now. He's allowing you to go through stuff right now that is breaking you, pushing you to your limits, so that at the end of it all, you can say, it wasn't in my own energy that made me or allowed me to be where I am today. It wasn't my own passion. It wasn't my own desire. It wasn't my own awesomeness, man. There must be a big guy up above taking care of my every need, because I can't tell you how this is even possible. Verse 18, we're almost done. Remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you power to be successful. In order to fulfill the covenant he confirmed to your ancestor with an army. You know that scripture, Deuteronomy 8, verse 18, because it's really this, what I just read in different translations, says he is the one, he is the creator, he is the one who gives you the power to get great wealth. That word for wealth means, it's the same word where we get the word armies from. He gives you the ability to command an army, to overtake, plunder, and capture all the things that you are called to overtake, plunder, and capture in your life concerning your calling. He gives you, when you remember him and let him be the centerpiece, he's the one that will give you what you need to get more than you'll ever get without him. So that was number one. Oh, man. It happens when you just feel like the anointing of God in a moment. You just milk it. Now the udder is totally dry. Okay. Number one. That's number one. Number two, write this down. Lean into your limits. Lean into your limits. Because remember this, your limits let you into the level of leader that you are. Lean into your limits. Lean into your limits. You guys know Southwest Airlines? I gotta be quick. Southwest Airlines, you know that airline? Well, they developed what is known as this 10-minute turnaround time for their. I mean, they're really funny. Have you ever been on a Southwest airline flight? They're like super funny. I think it's Southwest. They make jokes and they like it's a whole comedy act. But they developed this turnaround time because they were running out of money, and so they decided to go from 4 planes to 3, and they developed this quicker time. They worked within their limitation. They loved their limitation. And rather than forfeiting and giving up, they actually were able to fly the same number of people around the world without as many planes. They were allowed to do more with less, in other words. Because they embraced a limitation financially, it wasn't going well, they had to cut one of their planes out. And instead of decreasing the number of flights, which is what we would do probably, right, most of us, they were innovative and they were creative. They embraced their limitation and they developed something new that now has become a model, and they actually did the same amount of business with less planes, less expenses. Which equals what? More profitability. That's what loving and learning to live within your limitations looks like, leaning into your limitations. Moses led into his limitation and said, okay, I can't speak, but I'm going to trust you to lead me along the journey, to lead these millions of people through a wilderness experience to which I've never done before in my life. I heard this quote, the more a person limits himself, the more resourceful he becomes. The more you limit your timelines, the more you limit yourself in certain areas, the more resourceful you become. The more you tighten on your budget, the more resourceful you become with that budget. Number 3, write this down quick. We're almost done. Lead with your limits. Learn your limits, lean into your limits, lead within your limits. Lead within your limits. I love what Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, because of the extravagance of these revelations that I am having, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. These limitations was not something that was a sickness. It actually describes. It wasn't even a physical handicap. It was a handicap that came as a result of the incredible trials, tests, and tribulations he was going through. People read this always out of context. Read the latter half and the before part, the chapters before. It describes all that Paul is going through. Tribulations, shipwrecking, being shipwrecked 3 times, being flogged just like Jesus. I mean, he was basically went through all the sufferings that Jesus went through, minus the cross at this point, okay? And so he's going through all this opposition, and no matter how much he tried to escape it, he learned to embrace it and let God in the midst of it, and it made him stronger because of it. So we don't go after this stuff, but if it happens, we embrace it, find the opportunity. We love the limitation because in that is the secret sauce of developing your calling in life. It's what's making you a real man of God and a real woman of God. That's what's solidifying you as a faithful loyalist to heaven. I was given a gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Now, let's just fast forward a little bit. Listen to what he says here. Once I heard that I was glad to let it happen, I quit focusing on the handicapped and began appreciating the gift, appreciating the limitation. Once I stopped focusing on not having a building, being a mobile church, I started to appreciate not having a building. Still a work in progress. Appreciate not having consistency. Still a work in progress. Appreciating, all this stuff. Okay, but you have to see your limitations sometimes in life as a gift from God to develop something in you that could never be developed otherwise without it. Man, it sucks. But what sucks will always equal success if you let God in it when it sucks. That was awesome. Listen to this. It was a case of Christ's strength. Listen to this. When he began appreciating the gift of the opposition, the trial, the breaking, the being pushed to his limitation, it was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now listen to this. Now I take limitations in stride and with good cheer. These limitations that cut me down to size. How many feel like, man, you're being cut down to size? Man, I feel that a lot. Lately, I feel that a lot. I've been cut down to size like, God, But that's the best thing for you. That's where gold gets refined. The best refinement of gold looks like your ability to see your own reflection when you look into it. God wants to look at the gold of your life and see his reflection. So all this testing, all this limitations that you're being pushed to is a part of preparing you so he can see his reflection in you. Because if he can see himself in you, the world will definitely see it all around you. Now I take limitations in stride and with good cheer, these limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. The more limitations that I embrace in my weakness, the stronger that I am. The more confines to my calling, the more liberty and freedom that I have. The more guide rails and guidelines, the more life that I find. You hearing what he's saying? In the place of struggle is where you find the greatest place of strength. It's a secret sauce to your calling. Number 4, write this down and we're done. And I want you to stand up. Launch from your limits. You got to learn your limits. You got to lean into your limits. You got to lead within your limits. And you got to launch out from your limits. You know how many game-changing inventors invented game-changing things that reformed society when they had a limitation? They decided to do all those things and then launch out from it and change the world. The innovators, the creators of our day. That's what we're all called to do. We're called to co-create with God and turn something from nothing into something spectacular. That's the nature of God. Dr. Seuss, you guys know him, right? Wrote his most famous book by only using 50 different words. Did you hear that? His most famous, his everything was launched in essence. His most famous book, what gave him the most street cred, came from embracing limitations. He only used 50 different words. And that became his most famous book. You'd be surprised what God will do with the little that you have in your hand. That's how we talk about giving here, you guys, because when you learn to trust God with your finances, even if you say, well, I don't have finances, you can't afford not to trust God with the little finances that you do have. Because if you can't trust God with the little that you have in the wilderness when you're in struggle, you definitely won't trust him on the mountain. Because you'll be way too tempted to self-indulge and never give God any piece of your pie. That's why at this stage, when you learn to trust God with the little, God can promote you because he can promote you based upon the health of your heart when it comes to trusting him with what he's given you. You want the big dreams? Start trusting God with your finances and the little that you have. Maybe you're too far gone now. It's even harder that you have more. I talk to people that have more. It's actually harder for them to trust God with their finances than those that have nothing. And it's obvious. When you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. But all of a sudden, when you have something and you're on the mountain, you have everything to lose, your reputation, because everyone's going to see you tumble down that mountain. So start trusting God now in the wilderness before you get on the mountain, because you'll tumble out the mountain and you'll stay there. Wow. Why don't you stand up with me for a second? I want you to close your eyes just for a second. Just close your eyes. Just doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what your place in life is, what your pursuit looks like, doesn't matter where your current situation, your struggle, doesn't matter your success right now. There's an equal playing field in this room. The cool thing about Jesus' message of peace and love is that it levels the playing field. There's nobody better than anybody else in this room. There's an equal playing field right now. Maybe you feel like you've focused so much on trying to fulfill your soul with things that are temporary, and you've only come to the end of yourself and realized that, man, that is just not what life's about. And you felt like you forfeited what really matters for what doesn't matter. Jesus wants to just rearrange your thought patterns today. But you don't have to do that anymore. He's here to be the one that fulfills your soul. Because when you die and it's all over and you're on your deathbed, none of that stuff that probably you're focusing on right now is going to matter that much. It's hard to hear sometimes. Jesus embraced his limitations as a human. In fact, when he came to the earth, it says he forfeited, so to speak, the privileges that he had being God, but also being fully human. He was fully God in human form, but he had to come like us, to be a man just like us, embraced the limitations that define us so he could be a prototype and a model of what it would look like to live a God-like experience in a human body, through a human life. He could have done a lot of things. He could have came down off that cross. He could have showed himself. He could have showed himself, called down lightning on all those people that were crucifying him. Those that were waiting for him ended up crucifying him. He could have done all, but he did not, because he was paying a price that he knew we could never pay. He knew there would be a limit within mankind, that they could never pay that price. And most of you in this room, probably if you were held at gunpoint, someone said, deny Jesus, you probably would. I'm just being honest. Some of you probably are like that in this room. You don't have to stay that place. God wants to so get faith into you that nothing will move you. No threat. I mean, we live in an easy country when it comes to this stuff. No threat, no intense conflict. Jesus knows that there is human limitation. And so he just says, hey, if you want to just open up the door outside of your human limitation and be liberated in me and experience my limitless power, so to speak, let me into your life. Love your limitation so much that you let me into your limitation so I can liberate you, set you free, and show you how limitless and incredible your heavenly daddy really is. Jesus wants to set you free today. If you're in this room right now, just every eye closed in this room, this is a heart surgery moment. I can feel like a heart surgery moment happening. It's like, okay, God, every one of us, I know this for a fact, has something in our heart that has been put above Jesus. You may sound super spiritual, but on the inside, you know there are areas of control. There are areas of great weakness that you've let dominate. Instead of letting God's strength into your weakness, you let your weakness dominate. Anxieties, things that you just accepted. I'll always be this way. I'm always a failure. I'll always be like this. I'll always, all those things. When we do that, we're putting those things in front of our face instead of God in front of our face. Instead of facing God head on and letting his hand deal with the stuff, we're facing our problem head on and forgetting that God is the one who wants to be the one we're faced head on with, to deal with the stuff that we're facing. So Jesus, heal us right now. Come on, stretch out your hands to receive right now. If you feel comfortable, just lift your hands up. When you lift your hands up, you're like, why am I lifting my hands up? Because it's like the heavenly police is in here and saying, listen, stick them up because I want to do something. I want to handcuff you with freedom right now. I want to handcuff you with liberation right now. I want to handcuff you right now with healing. I want to handcuff you with wholeness. I want to handcuff you with everything you need in this season for you to dominate, for you to be the one that makes change, for you to be the one that innovates. I want to be the one that gets all the glory. So stick them up, man. Stick them up, woman, because I want to get in where I've not been able to get in before. I want to get in so deep that I totally rearrange everything in your life. I want you to live true spiritual life from here on in, where you stop living for yourself to gratify yourself and say, hey, how can I gratify? How can I advance? How can I honor Jesus and the kingdom with everything that I have and with everything that I do? How can I love my limitation?